was deputy county judge. And during that time, we had a very difficult situation because we had a lawsuit that was judged against the county for which resulted in about $10 million from one of the constitutional officers' misbehavior. And I knew that the responsibility for that falls not on that particular constitutional officer, but on fiscal court itself, because fiscal court is the chief executive of the county government. Therefore, I thought it was fundamental that the Franklin County Fiscal Court and the county judge executive be on board with this. And I found no evidence in the material that I've reviewed, nor my conversation with Mr. Melton, that he had approached the Franklin County Fiscal Court for support, and I thought that was very fundamental. Number three, it appeared to me, and there might be other evidence that would disprove this, but it appeared to me, and it was presented to me, that the two Frankfort paramedics were handpicked by Mr. Melton, and there was no competitive order in which other people could compete for this. And that bothers me, because I think every job that we offer is competitive, and within the fire service, you have a paralegal, not a paralegal, paramilitary type situation where you have chain of command, and things are very systematic. Yet it seemed that there was no system for the choosing of these two particular paramedics over other paramedics that might have wanted to participate. Number four, I thought that it was apparent our fire service is short in personnel as it is right now. One problem we have in our budget is the amount of overtime. And the overtime that we estimate we're going to spend this year for firefighters is over $300,000. Now, these two paramedics would be called upon to respond. For example, we recently had a SWAT team situation in which the SWAT team was required, and our local folks, our city folks, were required to spend about 11 hours because of a barricaded individual, and to allow the proper procedures for waiting this person out. So if you use that example, and we were loaning our paramedics to the county, they would be gone for a substantial amount of time. And it's not only the time they're gone, but they would need adequate rest before they return to duty. So there's a real hardship on staffing of the Frankfort Fire Department, which would require us to pay overtime, and especially to lose these individuals on very short notice when they had to respond to an emergency activity. So my last reason for making this decision is there are many, many legal questions about the workers' compensation coverage while they were responding, their liability. There are many things that can happen in a SWAT situation. Many SWAT situations include weapons. Somebody asked me a question, and it was a trick question. They said, how many SWAT situations include weapons? And I said, I don't know, probably 75%. And they said, no, they all do, because a large amount of weapons are taken to the site. So there's always the opportunity or the chance that someone will get hurt. And I expressed this to Mr. Melton, and he said, oh, nobody's going to get hurt. And I said, how can you guarantee that? And he said, well, we train. We're going to have training. However, his MOA that was proposed, MOU that was proposed, stated that they would only train half of the amount of time that the Kentucky Tactical Operations Association recommends. So another thing is that at the time I talked with Mr. Melton, he said he was going to make these special sworn deputies. The paramedics would be special sworn deputies, and some misunderstanding came up about the legal issue of what special sworn deputies can do, and if you can be sworn under 2 jurisdictions. And subsequent to that conversation with Mr. Melton, he wrote a short letter saying, I am writing, now this is not to me, this is to a sworn deputy who is a city employee. I am writing to inform you of my decision to revoke the special deputy status of all City of Frankfort employees effective immediately. I have decided to go another direction with tactical EMS. Please have your staff return the sheriff's office badges and IDs as soon as possible. So that seems to be contradictory to what was first expressed. At first, they were going to be special deputies and they were going to carry weapons to the responses. And now this letter has been issued, so I don't know where that stands. But basically, those are the reasons that, very quickly, let me say, there's no barrier to Mr. Melton having a SWAT team because he can use EMTs in the county fire department, which is a professional fire department distributed across the county. I think every firefighter is an EMT. That's my understanding. And with some more training, they could become paramedics, and they would already be distributed very nicely across the county so that their response time could be faster than some other individuals who might not even live in the county. So that, along with the exposure to risk and liability, are the reasons that, and the problem that we have with our labor force and the overtime. Those are my main reasons.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, you have want to question the city manager. Commissioner Butler?
I assume we'd have the opportunity to ask questions after.
Yes, you will.
Again later.
Sure,
as well.
absolutely.
Okay, but I don't have any questions right now.
No questions right now.
Okay, then we now move on to the
It's okay for me to be here.
Oh, sure.
Mr. Durr and Mr. Hunt. Would you, I guess, come over to the microphone and state your case?
My name is Sergeant Brad Durr, Frankfort Fire Department. Got some paperwork here I'll hand out to you. Might enlighten you here a little bit.
Oh, no, you won't.
I don't even know where to start. Really, there's a whole bunch with that response. Mr. Goins, I heard you talk back and forth that you talked with Mr. Melton a bunch there, and I would assume you talked with our fire chief when making some of these decisions. And as I go down this list here, there was a lot of either miscommunication or misled facts. The first one was the incompatible badges, which was the first response that I got back from my fire chief. After what exactly happened was we'd approached our chief. He went on up the chain. It seemed like he was in favor of it. Went on up the chain. Later come back through a problem resolution form. Got all the way up to Fred. He had responded back. Went to turn the problem resolution form in, thinking that it would bypass our fire chief since he was unable to rule it on in the first place. He ends up ruling back and comes back with KRS 61.080, which is incompatible badges. My understanding, he got that from Mr. Moore. Is that correct, sir?
There is a statute that indicates that if you're a sworn officer for the county, then there's a real question as to whether or not you can also be employed by the city. You can't hold two positions with differing jurisdictions at the same time in many instances. If there is not going to be a sworn officer position at this time, then of course you would have city employees working under the supervision of Sheriff Melton, a county employee, and then that really brings up the issue of the potential liability not only to our employees that are working in the SWAT situation, but also people that might be injured during that situation, because of course they'll potentially file suit against not only the county but also the city, since our employees are working in that application, if you will.
The revoking that you spoke of the special deputies, Mr. Goins, was from Sheriff Melton, who sent that out to Darren Rambo concerning Wayne Briscoe, Russ Greenwell, and Mike Billings. He was revoking their special deputies. And after seeing the KRS and incompatible badges, I take it that no one was aware that they were sworn by the sheriff's office. That's how they operate on the city's team, was they were sworn by them, and that gave them arrest powers, which is the same exact thing of what we're asking you to do. It's just going to be with a different agency. We already provide medics to the city SWAT team. We currently already do that. And we talk about liability and putting someone in harm's way. I would assume that you're in harm's way in the city just as well as you are dealing with serving warrants or hostage situations in the county. But he revoked those, and the reason he explained it to me was because he done the city a favor. According to the POP standards, they needed to be sworn, and the city police chief cannot do so. KRS allows the sheriff to do so and have special deputies and gives them arrest powers accordingly. So he was doing the city a favor by swearing them in as special deputies. And is that not true?
We'd have to have the city police chief address issues about that, because I'm not familiar with that.
December 1998, this POP's come about. It talks about sending people to the academy, so on and so forth, be scheduled within a year. If not, you can't hire them back within 11 months. So Sheriff Melton was doing the city a favor by swearing them in, and all he was asking was, hey, look, provide me a couple medics on my team. When he got rejected that, he didn't see the benefit of doing a favor for the city if the city couldn't return the favor back to him. The first paper that you have there is the Attorney General's ruling on the incompatible offices. As you'll flip back through there, it talks about your fourth page back. 1.3 talks about a public office. If you'll drop down under number 5 there, you'll see the definition of an officer. If the question was whether or not a city firefighter is actually an officer, according to the KRS that you all quoted in the problem resolution form.
Are you talking about the one that specifically states that an officer means any person elected or appointed to a position which is created by the Constitution? Is that?
Yes, sir. It also says they have to meet all those criteria, which there's about 4 or 5 of those that we do not. But if that's the case, we're in violation of a whole lot. Our city manager, our emergency manager is hired by the county and also hired by the city, and then also was a special deputy. So the list goes on and on. So we could just review all those if that is the case. But the Attorney General's ruling, I take it as that those are not incompatible. If you'll flip on back to 2.3.1, down toward the bottom, gives a definition of an officer again. Who's elected or appointed officer of the city or is a member of the governing board of an city agency. So there are several times throughout this, as you go on through here, it even talks about what is compatible and what is not incompatible, and it talks about a deputy sheriff. It also talks about deputy coroner. In essence, you can't be a deputy sheriff, a deputy coroner. You can't be the county judge executive and also a mayor, so on and so forth. So normally that would be open to interpretation. That's why I requested the Attorney General's ruling on that. So I think that kind of clears that one up. And it was actually, it's a clarification there. It was Chief Deputy Ron White that approached me in his office one day. Was talking about medics on his team. That was not Sheriff Melton. We got to talking back and forth. Advised him that would be something I would be interested in. So to have those handpicked, that was not the case. The first email that you'll see, the first page of emails right underneath that Attorney General's ruling, it talks about why we were picked. Because if on your second page, I apologize, you're having to read these backwards. It says, "Can you tell me how you?" This was from Chief Passage to Pat Melton. Said, "Can you tell me how you come about to choose Darren Hunt to be on your TRU team? Just curious as why those two in particular." He goes on to respond back that Brad Durr's a former police officer. Ed Hunt was one of the original members of the TRU team for the city when the program was started. He's not tied to just us two. He opened it up to tryouts, and it states it there in that email. It later talks about one from Chief Passage here to the sheriff. Talks about a meeting that he's gonna have with different city officials. They wanted something in writing. That's when we come up with the MOU. The MOU, this whole position was just pretty much denied. There was no discussion other than me and the fire chief back and forth a couple different times, and it was just short, brief type conversations. I'd actually even requested a meeting with the city manager and got a response back through our fire chief that his decision was what it was, and there was no need to discuss it. Because I thought it seemed like there was a lot of things being left out, and when you look at the responses, a lot of those didn't even make sense. This started back in October. We're just now getting to this. Here you'll see on the third page back, this is from Sheriff Melton. It says, just FYI, Sheriff spoke to the fire chief. He's on board except for the overtime, and says he would have to talk to the medical director. We were not asking for any overtime whatsoever. We were just asking for our shift to be covered, if at all possible, during training or on any call-outs. We understand that that's not always feasible, and understand that we are shorthanded at times. There's also times that we have plenty of personnel there that would be no problem to let someone off. To go ahead and to respond to that, With that being said, we talk about shorthanded and not be able to send people out. For the county, we're going to send out an ambulance anyway at their request. So there's going to be 2 paramedics or a paramedic and an EMT sitting there and staging anyway. All we're asking is just to have 2 more people to be assigned to that team to go in there to be able to do any plugging or give fluids, whatever the need may be. I understand that it does on the KTOA. They do suggest the 16 hours. I think the City of Frankfort's about the only one, that, to my understanding, that I've researched that actually does those 16 hours of training. That is a suggestion, but it is not a requirement. Keep in mind, we've already done this. This team has already moved forward. So the support of physical court or whatever the case may be. We're already sworn in as special deputies, and we're moving forward on our own terms with this as volunteers with the Sheriff's Department. What we're asking for is for you all to be in support of this, if you would, and allow us to do the same thing that we're doing for the city's team. We're not asking for any overtime. We currently already do this for the city. They are asking for overtime. If at anything, we had talked about comp time, so that if we needed to be off on that shift, give us a couple hours comp time. If we come in and we're off duty, then let us accumulate a couple hours of off time, so it would be a wash. And we understand that within reason that you can't do that if we're that short-handed. And I believe that conversation took place, as my understanding, from Sheriff Melton. That was a question that he asked Mr. Goins was about the city's team. It's my understanding Mr. Goins was not aware of us supplying medics to the city's team. My other question is that why would we not put EMTs on the city's team if it's okay? We have EMTs that work for the city, and they're a whole lot cheaper. So according to our SOP for that, they're not even allowed to be on that team. And the reason they're not is because there's a big difference in an EMT and a paramedic. Okay. Basically anything going inside the body, IVs, fluids, intubations, giving medicines, EKG, so on and so forth. There's a reason they have paramedics. Training a paramedic, the comment was made that they could train them up to be paramedics quickly. That's not true. You're looking at 2 to 3 years, and actually the criteria for that's getting ready to change in 2013, and you're going to end up having to obtain a degree while doing so. So it's going to be even longer for us to train paramedics here at the city. If you could use EMTs for certain stuff and not use paramedics, well, then there would be no reason to contract with the city to provide EMS. The county would just buy ambulances and just run their own EMS. There's a reason they contract with us, and it's because of the paramedics. It is very beneficial to have them assigned to the team. A lot of statistics will show that, even on school shootings, that team is inside for a great amount of time, and medics have proven to save a lot of lives that normally wouldn't be saved with EMTs, or waiting for a scene to be cleared to go ahead and get EMS personnel in there to them. I believe that's about all I got. Like I said, we were not asking to have our schedules accommodated. That is not true. We were asking if it was feasible to let us off. The county already contracts with us for EMS. I understand this. This is not part of that contract. I think the costs are very minimal to the city, if at all. The workman's comp. You already got a policy on us. Like I said, we're already doing this. We're just asking you to support it and do the same thing that you're currently already doing for the city. Yes, I understand there's liability, but the city paramedics are in the same liable area that we would be, and I just don't understand the difference there. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions.
That question, is Mr. Firefighter Hunter, are you going to make presentation too, or not?
I apologize. He is not here. I thought he was going to be coming in late. I thought he had some child care issues.
Okay.
Was going to try to make
All
it.
right, any questions? Mr. Wilder?
I've got one question. This is something I'm not really clear on. You said that regarding concerns about overtime, there was a question of if you have to go on one of these calls, you said that you're asking that you be covered if possible. I'm unclear. Are you asking that? Are you saying that if possible, the city should find somebody to replace you on that shift, or if possible, the city has discretion over whether or not you even go in the first place? Which is the...
Ultimately, it would be nice if they would send somebody in to cover me, but we're allowed three slots off a day. So there's a lot of times that someone could take off. We could let 3 people off before we even have to hire overtime.
Right. So, but I guess, so that's what I'm asking. Let's say 3 people are off already. You get called in. Does that mean the city has discretion over whether or not to let you go, or whether or not to cover, whether or not to?
Whichever you would like. The city's team, the SOP for that is I believe, I don't know word for word, but it is written that way. If at all feasible to let that person off, and there's even times that we'll work short for an hour or two to let someone off. Ultimately, even a technical rescue incident, if you're gone for a couple hours, there's been times we work short because it's hard to get somebody to come in for an hour or two, or generally by the time you can get a hold of someone, they can get on their way in there. You're already back to whatever you're doing, and already back on shift.
And these questions are just so that I have a full understanding of what we're talking about. You mentioned that city ambulances go on these calls anyway. Are you referring to the fact that obviously a city ambulance would go on a call like this for for a city SWAT matter? Or are you saying that city ambulances actually would typically accompany county SWAT operations anyway?
This is a new forming team.
So this hasn't happened before?
No. And I guess what I was referring to, someone had shot themselves for domestic altercation. The ambulance has been put on standby. The law enforcement will get there, clear the scene, and then the ambulance will come on out anyway. And I guess what I was making reference to was that it was going to be unwarranted overtime. It was going to be that we were going to just take 2 guys and start paying them overtime. Well, that ambulance is already taken out of service anyway, more than likely on domestic, so on and so forth, whatever the case may be, or if they're serving a high-risk warrant. And I'm not going to speak of here, but in other counties, they're going to go ahead and put them on standby just accordingly, even with air methods. With the helicopter service, they're going to go ahead and put them on standby and say, look, this is what we've got going. If we was to need you, we want to go ahead and start getting things lined out just in case things go bad. But as far as for the county here, no, I can't speak of that because this is a new forming team.
That's what I thought. So if anybody has any questions?
I've got a couple of questions. Based on your knowledge, Mr. Durr, would you all be carrying weapons as member of the SWAT team?
Yes, sir.
Would you all be required to have weapons training or anything like
Yes,
that?
sir.
Obviously, with the SWAT training.
Yes, sir.
Would the city employees be the only medics on the team, or would they try to include EMTs or other, or is it part of the? And I'm asking you to speak for Mr. Milton, and I know you probably can't or don't want to, but is it his plan to begin the? You said it's a 2 or 3 year training process to be from EMTs to become paramedics. Is part of his long-term plans to begin the process of training those EMTs so that they can also be substitutes for you all in case something, the city is stretched to the limit and they can't let you go, then he has other options for medics?
It's my understanding, no, and the reason for that is and in one of those emails, you'll see that is one of his responses is that he wants working paramedics. He wants experienced guys. The Kentucky State Police, they've sent a member of their team to EMT school, and that's fine. He's got a certificate that hangs on the wall, but there's a big difference in a guy that works on the ambulance every day and has got experience. And I apologize. I hate to go back to the paperwork here. If you'll flip into the first email here, you'll see one from Darren Rambo to Sheriff Melton. And as this reads, it's my understanding that Darren Rambo was already under the impression that they were going to be using the city's medics anyway. And as it reads, I need to confirm that you are planning to use my TRU guys for any medical coverage required by the sheriff's office. There seems to be a few in our department that are under the impression that you will be using them as a separate team instead of us, even though none of them have approached me as the medical team leader as approved by the city and the medical director. This poses a couple of issues that I will need to speak to the fire chief and others about if that is true. If not true, please let me know so we can squash any rumors that may cause an issue. Please understand that other than my guys, no one has ever received any medical tactical training, which is a requirement. Also, I doubt the medical director would take on any additional medics under her liability since we operated on expanded protocols separate from EMS. I also doubt that the fire department would invest the thousands of dollars training and equipment, not to mention overtime, for a duplicate team. It seems that there are some looking for a way to circumvent the system that we have had in place for the last 9 years. That is an email from Darren Rambo to Sheriff Melton. Clarification there, Darren Rambo was nowhere in my chain of command whatsoever. This was something that we were approaching, and that was in the works, and ultimately ended up being separate from the city anyway. The deal with this team is they already operate with the city. Darren Rambo was not a practicing street paramedic, and that was one of the reasons that Sheriff Melton did not want him. And he defines that in his other emails here that he wanted working paramedics and that were on the street. It's my understanding, and the way I take this is that someone basically took their ball and went home because they did not get to do so. Sheriff Melton's other response was that they are already with that team. He wants his own paramedics that are assigned to his team. And there's a couple different ways. They have 4 different medics on their team for the city. If they can handle the city's team and the county's team, then they have too many paramedics for the city's team. And if they can't, then they need to put a couple more on. And that was Sheriff Melton's first suggestion was add these 2 guys to your team and assign them to me. You keep with your team, and we'll keep with ours. You know, and ultimately there probably should be a merged team in Frankfort and Franklin County, but it's probably not going to happen at this time. That's not up to me. It's up to the powers to be. But Sheriff Melton seems to feel that there's a need for 2 teams.
Mr. Attorney, you finished?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioner? Mr. Hidden?
Is it 8 medics that we have on city staff? How many medics do we have? 43 medics?
Yeah.
Okay. And how many EMTs? Is it-
We have about 30 more EMTs. 43 paramedics, I believe, and 36.
Thank you.
The deal with the armed and not armed, as I understand, the city's team does not arm their people. They evidently do not put them in harm's way. I'll pass a picture around to you. The 2 people I circled here are paramedics. They're dressed just like the police. You can't tell the difference in them. The police are standing right there. They're right beside them. So I would say that they were in harm's way if where they're at. My other question is, if they're not in harm's way, why'd they spend the money on the helmets and the ballistics vest that they have on? If they're going to be in a safe spot, it doesn't seem like those would be needed.
Mr. Hayden, you finished?
Well, and just clarification again, with what Commissioner Wilder asked, is that if a situation comes up in the county, we're already sending a team out. Correct? Are we sending?
Define your situation, because I don't want to say something that's false here.
All right, so a SWAT type situation happens in the county where they need the patrol. What if they have one of these rallies thinking that tons of violence may occur, but it's in the county? Are we, since we're already contracted, already sending our staff to be there on hand?
That request would be made by the sheriff's office. Whether or not that request would be filled, I'll leave that one up to the fire chief there. I don't want to speak out of turn. And I don't mean to not answer your question,
Right.
But I know the sheriff's department would request it. By all means, they would put it on standby. It would be the same thing as, like I said, if we had a suicidal person, if we had a person that had shot themselves, barricaded subject, they would put them on standby.
Can you define standby for us so that
You should be in a safe spot down here in South Frankfort. They called for an ambulance.
But can that ambulance be used for another call? Say you put, I'm sorry to interrupt, Commissioner
No,
Hayden.
you're
I
good.
just wanted to
You're
clarify. Say that you have an ambulance that you need that ambulance. If it's put on standby, does that ambulance go out? What happens? I mean, I'm confused as to.
Common practice. Common practice is that ambulance would be assigned to that incident. If we got down short, we would staff our other ambulance, which is up on the west side of town. That's our Monday through Friday transport ambulance. And then on the east side of town, they would pull one out of storage. And we would do it the same way that if 4 or 5 calls went out and we got short of ambulances. That happens on several different occasions throughout the month, several times.
So, but essentially, standby means you've reserved that buggy for a specific incident.
That is correct. And like I said, it happened down here in South Frankfort. They had one staged there. Firefighter paramedic Ed Hunt was there. As my understanding, got shot over top of the ambulance. So.
Can I ask one more question? I guess if we had a situation like we had in South Frankfort in the county, and anybody, the city manager, or you, Brad, can answer this, where we had a hold-up situation in an apartment building, say it was in one of the apartment buildings in the county, who would be the SWAT team that responds to that as it is today?
The Franklin County Sheriff's Office.
Franklin County Sheriff's Office. So the city wouldn't send their team out there unless the sheriff requested it? Or is there a memorandum of agreement or something like that?
That one I cannot speak of. I don't know if there's an MOU for that, but the county's team is operational. I ordered uniforms today.
Chief Posse, could we ask that of Chief Posse?
Chief?
My question is if we had a situation in a county apartment building like we did in South Frankfort, was it a month and a half ago or something, where you had a person, hostile situation, held up in an apartment building, shooting out. Mm-hmm. What team would respond to that? Would that be the Franklin County Sheriff's Office, or do we have any type of memorandum of agreement with the county where our team would come in automatically?
I'm going to have to defer that to Chief Wilhoit. Our personnel that are assigned to the police department, city TRU team, work as city employees with a city agency, the police department, and when they're assigned to them in those operations, they come under their direct supervision and control. So nothing is automatic. If the county had a situation and they wanted an ambulance, or they wanted the TRU team from the city, they would make that request to the PD, and that would result in implementing our medics to go to that situation.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, essentially they would have to request it
Yes.
before we would send it.
Right, and we don't, it's rare that we send an actual on-duty ambulance to a tactical situation. We only do that in a major incident, for instance, the South Frankfort, where the guy was actually shooting. There are normal SWAT operations where they're serving a warrant or doing a drug raid or whatever. We don't have an ambulance on scene. That's very rare. That's why we have paramedics assigned to their team. The paramedics are out there, and they're really pretty clandestine operations. I don't even know about them. They don't notify me of that.
Okay.
And that's the understanding and the protocol that we have. That's the way it works.
Thank you.
Commissioner May, do you have any questions?
No, I just reiterate that I had to recuse myself for the reasons that were previously stated with my relationship with Kentucky Sheriff's Association.
Okay. Commissioner Wilder.
So I think a number of concerns that were brought up, I think have been addressed here. I'm confident that this doesn't violate the incompatible office statute, which is one thing. There are some questions about whether or not this is really the best move for the county, but as far as I'm concerned, that's their decision for better or for worse. So they're making the request. I think we should just consider the request valid and only consider our end of things and not second guess their decision. Here are the concerns, though, that I guess I do share. One is the fact that we are. It seems like this would result in some more overtime, potentially, unless the sheriff's department would be satisfied with us simply not sending somebody on their call if we're short. And am I correct in understanding that's the only circumstance under which there would be overtime incurred? Is if we have to, let's say we're short.
The proposal under the MOU was that they receive comp time. Is that right?
That was a suggestion on our part, just to make sure that we were covered by workman's comp. And like I said, this was that MOU that was sent over was basically just a rough draft. It was it could be changed by all means, and I think it was kind of taken as this is the way it's got to be, and I think the city responded back with, then no, we're not interested. There was no negotiation. I think a lot of this could have been alleviated.
Well, I think that's kind of the point. I'm not talking about overtime or comp time for any member of, for any city employees who join the sheriff's team. I'm talking about overtime for anybody who has to replace you at the station.
Backfilling when you're absent.
Right. That's I don't see an overtime concern outside of that.
Yes, and there would be overtime if someone come in to replace me. But I believe that would be slim to none. Considering if we, sometimes we're full up and we have an extra person downtown. Like I said, we are allowed 3 people off before we even have to start looking for overtime. And what we do is by shuffling and jockeying people around to fill in those spots. So chances are, I could leave on a call out, and they could send someone up from downtown or wherever they had someone extra, and there would be no overtime accrued. We had also looked at it when picking up Ed Hunt. The reason for that is 2 different crews there. They could still operate.
And would this require both of you to go out?
No, sir.
Or just one of you?
Just one.
Okay.
So that even if they come up and said, "Look, we're full. We can't let you off," well, that's fine. Me and him are never going to be on the same day, anyway.
So I'm happy to, I guess, consider that concern negligible then. it seems that there is a question of liability. One of Fred's concerns about this not having the support, or not necessarily having the support of the fiscal court, is that, in his experience, county government could be held liable for, anything that happens out there. But then there's also a question about whether or not the city would be held liable. I mean, would both of us be exposed to the same liability, or would the liability only fall in one area?
The way that would work is, let's say that Mr. Doerr was on the tactical response team for the sheriff's office, and let's say that he was participating in the decisions on what kind of action to take, where he would place himself, etc., and someone is injured. Let's say the person that caused the actual response team to be released, then that person would sue not only the county, but he would also sue the city.
So you're saying that both entities would be exposed to liability?
Both entities would be exposed to liability. And then you would also have exposure to liability where if Mr. Doerr, I believe, is treating someone and he makes a mistake in his treatment for the county, then there could be liability there, which of course would be borne by the city's insurance carrier.
So here's something that I guess I'm having a kind of hard time working my way around, because I know that some of our firefighters moonlight on occasion for other fire departments. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, you guys have whole days off, so I know it's not uncommon for some firefighters to, on those days off, pick up occasional work with other departments. That's correct, right?
Sir.
And I assume that if anything were to go wrong while working for that other department, the city would in no way, shape, or form be liable, that the other department would be liable for that.
That's correct.
Because you're off work for the city. You're not on the city's clock.
And I apologize, I guess I left this part out. Clarification on the liability for treating someone. We've already got our own medical director for the sheriff's office, so we will not require to use the medical director from the city for this team.
But that doesn't, the problem is that doesn't stop the city from being sued.
Well, I guess here's what I don't understand, is what would be the problem with the city just, in these circumstances, letting these guys off the clock and having the sheriff's department pay for their time and assume liability for them for this period of time? I guess I don't understand how that would be a problem for the city.
Well, that's not how the sheriff proposed it, because the sheriff wants these gentlemen to be covered by the city's workers' compensation policy. And of course, if they're not employed by the city,
Sure.
and they're doing this as a separate contract with the sheriff's office, those two
Sure.
issues are apples and oranges. So here, Sheriff Melton would propose that the city's workers' compensation cover the city employees while they are under his supervision, and that's an issue. I don't know whether we've gotten a solid answer from the city's insurance agent about whether or not they would be willing to provide.
Well, and I don't really care about that. What I'm wondering is do we think it might be possible for, and I don't think this is unfair, for the sheriff's department to assume liability for you all while you're on their time?
Correct.
If they're willing to do that, then I can't see any reason not to. Then all we're being asked to do essentially is just to let you all off on occasion when the sheriff's department needs you, and that seems to me to be a very reasonable kind of partnerly thing to do.
To reiterate again, this MOU was merely a suggestion. It was not cut in stone. Hey, City of Frankfort, this is the way it's got to be. It could be negotiated, and I apologize if it was taken as such.
Any other questions?
Just
Mr. Turner?
some comments, if I can. There are several different options from an insurance standpoint that you could take, and certainly would have to be outlined in any type of agreement or memorandum of understanding. But with regards to workers' compensation, the sheriff's office can, I don't know that they can fully assume the city paramedics as employees, because they're not technically employees of the county. But what they can do, and this is an instance that you see a lot of times when you have volunteers, you can get accident insurance policies that cover that, to provide similar benefits to workers' compensation in case someone is injured. Now, that may be something that the city attorney or the county attorney would have to look at to see what type of differences between the current workers' comp policy versus accident and benefits and all of that. But the sheriff's office could take an accident policy to cover these two individuals. It would certainly be a benefit to them because they're getting higher trained employees on their SWAT team if they did that. And then from a liability standpoint, I agree with the city manager in that instance that it is a huge issue and it creates a large exposure for the city. But I think the avenues that you could possibly take are as having the city named as an additional insured under the policy of the county. Now, I would have to warn you that that would require fiscal court approval. And they would have to issue a certificate to the city saying that the county's insurance policy picks up the liability for these officers when they're acting as on the county SWAT team. So those are insurance solutions to the liability and the comp issues that have popped up here during this discussion, as to my knowledge.
Is it even feasible, and this suggestion was made as well, to have the sheriff's department reimburse the city for that, which is something that we do many times over. We do it with the state capitol. The state reimburses the city for us to send a paramedic up here to be on standby while they're in session.
Are you talking about reimbursing for workers' compensation?
It's my understanding that it's for pay and for insurance or benefits thereof. Is that correct? As far as for the capital, for the state subcontracts through us or contracts through us, it's a total that is added up for benefits and salary, correct? To cover whatever those expenses would be, sir. But if your hourly and benefits were prorated out to $30 an hour, that's what's reimbursed.
I think what you would want in that instance is for the county to assume the liability under their policy versus pay the city, simply because it provides more protections for the city in that range, because then the city's insurance policy would still pick up if there was a liability. Now, from a comp standpoint, the city is unique in that it's self-insured under the workers' comp, so unlike a traditional work comp where you get injured, you go and the doctor and the insurance company pays you, we cover the first, was it 100,000? Is that right, Randy? 325. What's that? 325. First 300. That's right, 320. I just looked at this the other day. The first $325,000. So it's difficult if he's paying us because suddenly his budget could be in real big trouble should there be an incident. And I would imagine that if a SWAT member was seriously injured, that they could get that 325 quickly. So any type of memorandum of agreement or anything like that, we would want the county to pick up that liability and that accident.
And me and both Firefighter Hunt have taken on another policy other than through the city. We actually have Colonial through the city. We've picked it up through another carrier for accident, short-term and long-term disability to cover that as well. Like I said, this is something we've moved forward on. I wish the city would come on board with and support us in.
You may have clarified this while ago. I'll let you comment, Mr. Chief. But if you were involved as a firefighter in a big fire that's going on, and you get the word, hey, there's a crisis here for the SWAT team, what happens?
I would stay exactly where I was. And if I was fighting the big fire, then Firefighter Hunt could respond as their paramedic for the Franklin County Sheriff's Office team. I said we're on two different crews. It just happened to work out that way. Hopefully it would grow that we could put another member or two on once we got this off the ground, so that there was even a greater chance that you would have 2 people that would be free. Be no different than if I went on vacation. You would have someone else there to cover you.
Chief, you wanted to make some comments?
Just a couple things.
Mr. Durr, sorry, I think the city manager wants to have well. Go ahead.
Just a point of clarification, I just wanted to point out that, because we seem to be mixing up the issue of a county team and a city team, and, why are we doing it with the city if we can't do it with the county? The big difference there is we provide city employees, i.e. paramedics, to another city agency, the police department. They're already city employees. They're already covered under all our liability insurance, all our workers' comp. So there's no convolution of all these insurance questions like we would have between two different jurisdictions. So that's why it works well with the city. There aren't any of those issues. We all have the same insurance, same workers' comp, et cetera. And we have different people on different crews so they can respond without pulling people off crew, except in a dire situation. But 2 points I wanted to make. Granville Coblin called me Friday.
Who is she?
Granville Coblin,
Oh,
our insurance agent, regarding this issue. He would have been here tonight, but he's out of town until Thursday, I think. He asked me to please pass on that should you decide to allow this to happen, please give him the opportunity to consult with the commission first, because he has some real concerns about KLC with respect to liability coverage for city employees while working for the county.
Oh, I share those concerns.
Yes,
with Mr.
yes.
Coblin. That's why.
And he hadn't been able to get very far into it in direct conversation with KLC, but he says there are some real issues there, as you well know, Commissioner. But the bottom line is the simple solution, and I pass this on to Mr. Durr. We certainly allow our firefighters, paramedics, to work any side job they want on their off days. They can work for Walmart, they can be a painter, they can work for a roofing company, whatever. So the simple solution is, without the city sanctioning, providing on-the-clock city employees, however you want to look at it, simply let the county hire them as part-time employees. Let them work for the county sheriff's office on their days off as a part-time employee. They're covered under the county's liability. They're covered under the county's workers' comp. We don't have all these issues. That's the most basic, simple solution there is. That provides Sheriff Melton with the paramedics he wants. They're already trained. They already have their own medical director because our medical director is not willing to do it. It just it seems like a very simple solution to me. Just let the sheriff's department hire them as part-time employees on their days off, whether it be for training or incident responses.
Commissioner Wilder, then Commissioner Hedden.
I mean, that's pretty similar to the case I'm making. I think that for the most part, this is a pretty reasonable request. The only hang-up I have with it is the fact that the county's asking us to pay for and cover their employees, essentially. Mm-hmm. So if you're working for the county, you're working for the county. Mm-hmm. And I'm really happy to let these guys work for the county. But it seems that if you're gonna work for the county should cover you. I think that's only fair. I mean, I'd be happy to take it a step further than what the chief is proposing, though, and still grant you a lot of leeway in terms of, quote, being on call. I mean, I think that's a fair partnership with the county, where you're not only able to go on these calls if you're off duty, but where we can give you leave on very short notice in the event of a county SWAT event. I mean, I think that's. Because then everything works exactly the way everyone's describing. The only difference is that the county covers your liability and your pay, et cetera, when you're working for them, which I think is pretty fair.
Okay, Commissioner Hedden.
You want to respond?
Yes, please. The only complication with that, Commissioner Wilder, is if we are shorthanded, as we are on most days. It's a very rare day that I don't have at least one person on overtime. So on those rare days, should they get called out, and we are not already at our maximum off-duty, allowing off-duty limit, certainly they could go. But if we are at our limit, we're already down to bare minimum standards, then yes, they would have to be backfilled. So that again raises the question of, do we just eat that overtime required to backfill their spots where they're gone, whether it be for 2 hours or 10 hours or whatever it may be. So that's the only question that I would have regarding what you just said.
Again, Mr. Durr.
See, Commissioner Hedden, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
My question is, I don't know if anyone here can answer or not, but who or what stops the county from hiring medics at this time? Why do they not? They just contract out through the city, correct?
Yes, I mean, they could certainly hire them as employees of the county fire department, but they don't have any. They've never sent anyone to paramedic training. It's very expensive and very intense, and it's about an 18-month training period. We're starting a paramedic class in September, and it's 18 months before it becomes licensed as a paramedic. And the county fire departments have just never chosen to do that. They require all their people, as we do, to be at least EMTs. I think they may have one paramedic. Yeah. So
they do have.
That's their choice. Is the bottom line. That option is available to them.
Okay, you finished on Mr. Turner?
My question was just that Mr. Durr stated that that part of the reason of having two representatives of the city paramedics was that so in case one was on call and couldn't get off, that there would be another one available that would probably not be on call, or maybe at another station that's not in as much need. Address that issue in terms of staffing at the fire department, and in your thoughts, would that pan out to happen that way, or just your thoughts on that?
If they have an incident, a call out, and they only require one of them to be there, then there's a 2/3 chance that neither one of them are going to be working. One of them is on crew one is on crew three. So every third day they work, as you well know. So on a day that Mr. Durr is working, in theory, Mr. Hunt would be off duty and available to respond instead of Mr. Durr, and vice versa. And then one day they would both be off, one day of the three, each 3 days. So it could happen that they need somebody. Mr. Hunt's out of town on vacation. They would want to call him Mr. Durr, and then we go back to what Mr. Wilder suggested. So it could or could not affect staffing. That's the best answer I can give you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Wilder.
I guess I'm just not convinced that the effect on staffing would be anything other than negligible. I mean, it seems like because what we're talking about to hit backfill, I mean, there are two variables that would have to come into play. And I realize that anything can happen. Everybody in this room could get sick with the flu next week. You never know. But I mean, how often does our SWAT team go out?
Our SWAT team is not only used for hostage barricade situations, but for high-risk warrant service. And I assume that's what the sheriff's office would be doing, too.
Can you give us a number, like how often?
We probably have had 6, 8 call-outs, maybe, where various things. Of course, we also do the call-outs for the search and rescue too. But outside of search and rescue, anytime there's a high-risk drug warrant, when there's an indication of weapons or anything, we'll notify TRU and at least get them assembled. Or if we have enough members of TRU that are working on duty, we'll go ahead and start a team and see if we can get a medic in.
So, for a frequency, like per
probably
month?
6 or it just depends. I'd say I know how active the sheriff has been with drug warrants, so I'd say his team will be fairly busy, or he'll certainly try to keep them busy
You're saying 6 or 8 times
over the year. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, if the primary concern here is backfill, and that actually at this point is my only concern, assuming that the sheriff's department would be able, would assume pay and liability, which I think is only fair, then I think the backfill concern is negligible, frankly. I mean, I'd be happy to. I'd be comfortable granting this request so long as the sheriff's office assumes full responsibility for the folks on their team while on their team.
Could I say something?
Please.
First of all, if the sheriff is going to put anybody on his team, even though KTOA says medics can be on there, paramedics should be on there. That should be a paramedic position, because like he said, those medics or those paramedics are going to be inside the hot zone, and you were talking about the ambulance being on the outside. But the paramedics are going to be somewhere staged inside the hot zone, or at least with our team. And let me get to that in a second. But, they're the ones that can start the IVs and do the invasive procedures. If you have a critical incident where there's a shooting of an officer or a civilian or something, those are the people that need to be the boots on the ground. So, that being said, that they should be paramedics. Now, how they get them is a totally different thing. Our paramedics, I think he said they were special deputies, and they were. And there was one incident about 5 years ago where one paramedic brought a gun to a scene, and they were told right then and there that will never happen again. If you want to be a policeman, go take the test. So our paramedics are not armed. They may be special deputies. They could be junior G-men. I don't care what they are. But if they're in a Frankfort Police Department operation, they operate under the orders and the procedures of the Frankfort Police Department, and specifically the tactical team, the tactical commander on the ground at the time. So that being said, I know of no other instance other than the one time that a paramedic came armed. If they did, it was certainly against my explicit order to the TRU commander at the time.
Share that with the chief there. There's a picture provided. Where it's being,
I don't think they have any guns on them. I think they're just...
oh, but okay, never mind then.
If I could add to that, when I was approached 9 years ago about providing paramedics to the city's team, I fully supported it with the stipulation that they would never be armed, that city firefighter paramedics will not carry weapons.
Now, that being said, now, I don't know what this picture depicts. I don't know if he's armed or not. He doesn't. He's not carrying a holster. If you'll notice, these other ones.
Right, just look like walkie-talkies.
Right. They're inside the hot zone. They're deployed there with the officers in case there's an incident. But that being said, the paramedics do receive weapons training. They have to know how to make a weapon safe because, like I said, a paramedic is going to be inside the hot zone. They're going to be where bullets have just recently flown. If the sheriff wants to arm his paramedics, that's fine. My personal opinion is the city shouldn't assume that liability because our police officers all went to the academy. We all have to learn about use of force, all that good stuff. If the sheriff wants to deputize somebody, whatever, let that be on his dime. Don't put it on the city's dime. And that's all I have to say about that.
Any other comment? The chief's proposal a while ago, your suggestion, made sense to me. Sergeant, how do you respond to that?
Actually, if I can, we talked about the overtime there. We weren't asking for any, but any time they call out any of their medics, it's in RSOP, they're getting overtime. So even if we're not shorthanded and you send some, if you let them off or call them in to respond with the city SWAT team, they're getting overtime. So if money was an issue, that's kind of null and void when they're getting overtime all the time. And I want to clarify one other thing on the hand-picked deal. That was not true. However, the city's team is not open to just whoever as well, and has never been. Those, if any, were handpicked. With the suggestion he made, the other thing that I just thought of that will come into play is we have a new 2300 work rule. Anything prior to your shift after 11 o'clock at night, you can't work. So I think this would impose on that. Or
That's just a policy, though, right? That's not by law. That's just internal policy.
that is correct. So we would be in violation if we were on a call out the shift before.
Chief, how do you respond to that?
I implemented that policy, I think, back in April.
But I mean in terms of the sheriff, what you said a while ago, the easy way to solve this whole thing is for the sheriff's department to have a contract with our. So that's what I'm saying. What would keep that from happening? What?
I'm not sure I've followed Mr. Durr's logic. What I suggested was no different than them taking a part-time job at Walmart.
Yeah. Right.
Let them become part-time employees with the county under all their liability coverage, under all their workers' compensation, under their payment schedule, whether they pay them an hourly rate for their time while they're on incidents or on training or whatever. Let it all be on them. The only question I have is, if they get called out on duty, if the commission supports letting them go and us cover that overtime for backfield, so be it. And you're right, it's probably going to be minimal. I can live with that. But I think the ultimate important solution is just to let them become county employees, not complicated by being a city employee while working for the county sheriff's department, et cetera. That's the simplest, cleanest solution, and then we don't have all these insurance questions and liability coverage questions.
And this hearing today would be moot question. We just say.
Yeah, I don't know how Mr. Goins feels about that. I certainly can't speak for him.
That sounds like a good solution to me. We have many working agreements with Franklin County government, and unfortunately, this has just been one that's been a little more controversial. But we work every day with the county government, and there are a lot of entanglements to the original preliminary proposal here. But it sounds like we've worked through them, and there are several options. This seeming to be the best. That if the sheriff wants to employ them part-time, why not just do that?
Right. And as you said, I'm sure he would have to. The sheriff doesn't foot the bill, to my knowledge, for the workers' comp and liability coverage. The fiscal court does, as you stated. So if he can work that out with them, so be it. And just as a side note, when I responded back to Sheriff Melton and said, the city manager would like you to put your request with the details in writing so that we can look at it and then respond. At the same time, I also relayed to him that we suggest that you run this by the county attorney to get his input and see if he's on board or has any issues with it. And when he sent the proposed MOU to me, I responded back by email saying, did you, well, I don't remember if it's email or phone call, one or the other. Have you talked to Rick Sparks about it? Is he okay with it? And his response was, I don't have to get the fiscal court or Rick Sparks to approve anything I do. I'm the sheriff. So my impression was he had not discussed it with anybody. He was just, which is probably why he said, I'd like the city to cover the workers' comp and the liability. I don't know. But that's just something just information you might want to have.
I mean, I would love for us to ask other agencies to send us their employees and
Absolutely.
and pay for them and cover their
Yeah, that'd be a
liability.
pretty good
I mean, we could put in requests that maybe we get some state police on our police force, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, that's all well and fine, but the case I'm making, I mean, I think we're making the same case here, which is it'd be really great to share you all with the county sheriff's office, and I'm really happy to enter into every detail of this agreement. As long as you're on their dime. I mean, that's all it boils down to.
Well, if the sheriff would hire them, we wouldn't have to enter into agreement.
The only agreement that we'd have to enter in would be that if there was a call, that we would, what the criteria would be for us to send that person off their shift, which would be still a partnership between the city and the sheriff's office and so forth. But we would have to put that criteria in writing so that it's clear that, if staffing levels are not high enough, then, we can refuse it or something like that, or that there's other employees.
Yeah, and Mr. Moore may correct me if I'm wrong, but I agree with you. I think that's the only written agreement that would have to be addressed. If he hires them as a county employee and they're covered otherwise by compensation, insurance, et cetera, then that is of no concern to ours. They're not working for us. Any action they take would be on the county, not us. The only thing we'd have to do is cover their time off. You agree?
Okay, just try to bring this thing down to a close here. Our purpose of being here is because the city manager turned down the request. Now, do we have a proposal from anyone from Commissioner? As for me, I stay with the city manager's decision, and I support that. Now, is there Commissioner Wilder?
I guess I would request that the city manager and/or other staff just negotiate different terms with the sheriff's office. And I think Mr. Durr even mentioned that the MOU was the opening salvo in a negotiation. I mean, if that's the case, we should at least see if they're amenable to these terms. Because if they are amenable to assuming liability, which means assuming you all as part-time employees, then I'm really happy to risk eating the backfill. I don't think we're talking about much backfill there.
You've heard Mr. Bowens.
Would you add to that discussion? Would you include the county judge executive and the county attorney? Because they do hold the ultimate responsibility for liability insurance and workers' comp.
It's true. That is true that they do. Falls on them. So. Yeah.
Yes, if they're agreeable to the terms.
You're saying that the county judge and the county attorney can say yay or nay to any given sheriff's office employee? I just always assumed that the sheriff's office actually did have discretion.
I'm not getting in the middle of this.
That's what I said. I don't think we should get in the middle.
The sheriff is a constitutional officer,
yeah,
as well as the county judge executive. But the way county government is set up, that's why they call the judge executive, because they have the executive authority over certain things. And some of those things are the liability insurance coverage, and all of the insurance coverages are in the judge's budget, not in the other elected constitutional officers' budget.
Well, and also to add to City Manager Goins, the fiscal court also appropriates money to the sheriff's office. So they're the power of the purse for the sheriff. So essentially they could say, you have no employees, we're not paying funding for any of them, and then there would be no employees. They would all be volunteer, I guess.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that's all completely valid. But I guess my point is that that's all. I think that's all the county's business. I don't know if any of that's any of our business. I mean, if they can work it out, they can work it out, and if they can't, they can't. I'm just saying that, seeing as how we have a request from a county constitutional officer, I'm happy to say that.
I agree if they can show evidence of coverage. That's no problem. I have no problem with that.
Okay.
Chief?
I'm sorry, but I just had one other thought. If we sanction, if this agreement comes to fruition and we sanction them being called off duty as needed and backfill them if and as needed, is that also going to apply to training? Because he stated they're going to train twice a month in 4-hour blocks. So I just need to know, are we going to operate the same terms as a call out regarding I need to be off for this 4-hour block for training?
If we're all being good partners, I don't see why they couldn't schedule the training for the days both of you are off. Is that unreasonable? I mean, if we're all trying to give and take and work with each other.
That is correct, and for the most part, they do. There's seven other members on our team, and they also, at the sheriff's office, also have to do coverage and scheduling for those. Those are working deputies. They're not assigned full-time to this SWAT team. They also work the roads, so they have to move around, and there might even be one person that might not even be able to make it because they couldn't get their shift covered there at the sheriff's office. But for the most part, yes, they do try to accommodate us.
Well, I guess from the city's policy perspective, then, my inclination would be to say that we cover the backfill for an actual SWAT event, and that we make our guys available for training if we can. Yeah. Does that make sense?
If we can, meaning if it doesn't require overtime.
Yeah.
Certainly, that's fine with me.
Does that sound fair? I think that sounds fair. I'm gonna
If they know, I mean, you're going to have a schedule of your training probably a month in advance each month, I would assume, right?
Yes, sir.
So, on those days they know what their training days are going to be. There's nothing to prohibit them from asking for vacation time during that time period. And if it's available, we grant it just as if they wanted to go to Myrtle Beach. It's no difference, If we have the availability to let somebody off, we're not very short-staffed, they could go ahead and pre-plan that in advance and take their own time to do it.
And there's not a problem with them. There aren't any legal problems with one of our guys taking because I don't have a problem with that. But to be clear, I mean, let's say one of our guys were to take sick leave and then use that time to work for another agency. I know we run into problems with that, but that's not a problem with vacation time. It's perfect. I assume it is perfectly appropriate within our policies for somebody to take vacation time and then use that time to contract with another agency.
Vacation or holiday, but not sick time.
I mean, the alternative is to take time off unpaid from the city and then just get paid by the other agency instead, right? I mean, I assume you all would be actually paid for the work you're doing. They would pay their other deputies, but they wouldn't pay you guys?
KRS for special deputy, you cannot receive compensation. So, therefore, the sheriff's department could not pay you an hourly. I'd called KCO with the permission of the chief deputy. What was talked about was the easiest way would be to reimburse the city for whatever that was, since you already had liability insurance on me. If not, they could do a calculation on if you were working X amount of hours per month, how much that would be for a year's worth of insurance, and that would be the amount that the sheriff's department would owe to cover us on a part-time basis for insurance.
Just got sticky.
I think that moves us back into the problem we thought we were avoiding.
There's no loopholes.
Well, I mean, it sounds like there's no way for any member of this team to get paid for doing this work, including the deputies within the sheriff's department.
Sir?
Including the existing deputies within the sheriff's department.
No, they are deputies. We are sworn in as special deputies.
Oh, so when they're doing this particular work.
No, sir, they're still deputies as well.
But if you all were part-time employees of the sheriff's department, then surely you could be.
There's a difference between special.
Surely you all could be paid, right?
I'm sorry.
But if you all were actually taken on as part-time employees.
Yeah, if he hires us as part-time paramedics.
Okay.
Sure. Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, I think that would be really worth it to them, because they're still getting a hell of a bargain for a fully trained professional paramedic.
Plus, being able to pull them off if they're working at the city, being able to pull them from there in case of an emergency.
That was the whole thing, was to have the city support and for it to be easier for us to get off shift if need be. And like I said, as support of the city, we've already moved forward. We're currently doing this. I wish this was something the city supported and it would allow us to be off shift. I thought
I
it was-
absolutely support that.
I thought it was pretty simple. Like I said, this other team, if money's your issue, you're already paying them overtime every time they go out. We didn't ask for any of that, and it still wasn't supported by the powers to be. And like I said, I didn't think all the facts were out there as well either. And I could tell by the opening statements tonight. So.
I mean, I think the concern was the liability. Was them asking us to assume liability for you all. But if that wrinkle can be avoided, it sounds like we have a pretty broad consensus that we would support allowing you all to do this.
Thank you.
I'm still confused. I get confused a lot of times.
That's okay.
Something we can discuss. Yeah. If the sheriff's department will hire you guys part-time, I know Commissioner Turner said we had to have an agreement for them to leave. If they're part-time, we make some kind of agreement that if they're called out, then we let them go.
Yeah, I think it would just be a smart.
Well, is there anything, are we assuming then that the sheriff's department is only going to hire 2 people? I mean, I heard you say we had 43 paramedics. Why couldn't the sheriff is part-time with some kind of a contract, have 10, 12, or all 43? And then if you're fighting a fire and there's a need for a SWAT team to be called off, surely to goodness we'd have some people that would be there that could be called in and not have all this problem. It seems to me. That may be very simplistic. I may be lost here. Chief, is anything wrong with that?
Well, the basic problem that first comes to mind is the training.
Right.
The more people you involve, the more complicated and cost ineffective it's going to be trying to get everybody trained to the same level. That's why we have only 4 of our members presently on
Right, but I'm saying if the sheriff employed, our people are already trained, right?
but not trained in the tactical operations. They're only trained as paramedics. They're going to require specialized tactical operational training just for the SWAT team.
But they could hire more than 2, right?
Oh, they could, certainly.
That's what I'm saying. Why could? To me, it just seems sort of foolish to have to go to all this technical stuff about coming to an agreement to let them to go or not go, and who's going to pay it. It seems to me your solution was the most simple thing we could do.
In effect, the more personnel, the more paramedics that they would hire part-time would more and better alleviate the problem of us having to backfill. If they said we need 2 paramedics to go on this particular call, and I had 6 to choose from, I could say, okay, you can go, and the other has to stay and not have to backfill, in theory. But I don't know if I have no idea if the sheriff's interested in having just 2, or if he's interested in having 6 or 8, I don't have a clue.
Okay, well, let's try to get this thing settled here. I would love that, so we can move on. We've got to work on a budget here. So what is your pleasure, friends? What you want to state your...
Sure.
Again, to see if you got a second and what have you.
Because it sounds like there might be some confusion, but it sounds like we all agree. It sounds like you and the commission and the chief and the employees and the city manager all agree that there wouldn't be any problem with the city entering into an agreement or a memorandum of understanding with our own employees in the sheriff's department, allowing for our employees to take leave on short notice from their responsibilities as city firefighters in service of the county's SWAT operation. And this is under the assumption that they would be hired by the county and insured by the county. Is that a...
Did we get
something?
Support for that statement?
That the county takes the liability.
Forever you shutting this down?
Sounds like a solution to me.
All we need to do is give them the time off upon request. Just give them permission to do this.
I'll second that.
Is that a motion, or is this just a?
Do we have to make a motion?
I think that the city manager can just go talk with Sheriff Melton and discuss those terms and then come up with a letter agreement. I don't even know that it needs to be an actual contract. If they're going to be his employees, then we just need to have some accommodation on when they'd be able to take off to participate in a SWAT team training or a SWAT team operation.
Okay. Everybody.
I'm sorry to keep stepping back up here, but one other thought. We may want to consider at least discussing some kind of limit on that amount of time, relative to what Chief Wellhoit said. You know, if every day Mr. Durr's on duty, they're calling for him to be activated for 3 or 4 hours, that's become a problem. As opposed to if it's once or twice a month, that's not going to be a problem. But if it becomes excessive, it certainly may be. So it's just something to think about.
The city manager would work it out with them. Is that right, city manager?
I'll be glad to talk with the sheriff.
That's what I mean, yeah.
Be glad to meet with the sheriff and discuss it.
Okay.
As soon as we can cross that bridge if we come to it. Even.
Oh, you don't think it's necessary to meet with him?
No. The question of putting a limit on on hours.
I see. I
mean, I think if that becomes a problem, then we can address it. I don't anticipate that being a problem.
Well,
I guess do we move to close the hearing and go back into our regular work session?
I think we've got a recess on the agenda there for a second.
I'm not sure the procedural order.
let's close the hearing, okay? Okay, got a second? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all right, now we have here on the agenda a recess. Do I have a motion for recess?
Move for a 5-minute recess.
Okay. Got a second down here. All in favor, say aye. 5-minute recess.
We can discuss the fun stuff.
Yes, she's texted me 5 times.
Oh, I'm not trusting you. I know it is.